So this isn't going to be your typical review. You know, as a YouTuber, it's my job to make every video look clickable. And this one is a big ask. Because on the surface, there's not really anything to talk about in the way of this episode. There's not a lot of clever callbacks, there's obviously no story progression, really. Even the character arcs seem kind of one note in this one. But there is something to talk about, and we're gonna get to that. First of all, this episode puts the focus back on some of the high school hijinks, but only sort of. We're not actually in the high school itself, we're just focusing on Summer and Morty. So one thing I'll mention in the way of a general review is that Rick was a standout in this episode. Honestly, every joke that came from him was just landed for me. Really solid writing for Rick's dynamic this week. The joke in the beginning about him hiding in the trash bag, and the recurring bit where he keeps just wanting to punch people even if they're not responsible. It was pretty good, it was fun. But other than that, this episode was kinda, it kinda underdelivered, I gotta be honest. I like the original premise better. So the episode starts with Rick giving Summer an attribute slider, which can increase her intelligence, her strength, her charisma, and her dexterity, but only to certain degrees. I actually found this to be one of the more interesting parts of this episode. I don't think she can have all of them maxed out at the same time, which is actually a pretty interesting plot device. I love that. An episode where Summer is super strong, but then Morty puts it on and gains intelligence and outsmarts her, but then Summer punches it off of him, and then Morty uses the charisma to rizz up Jessica or something. I don't know. The point is they could have done a lot with that, and even Rick calls it out as he thought that was going to be the main driving force this week, but it's not. The idea that Summer is sort of doing chores for Rick in exchange for gadgets isn't a new concept, but it is one that you can't do a whole lot with. I mean, we've already seen it in Solarix, and even then it was just a weak B-plot. She could, I don't know, clean up another Morty's mind blowers, which is kind of a funny detail, because it just goes to show that Morty's mind blowers probably happens once like every week. That's just kind of hilarious. I've been missing Summer, man, and I wish she had more involvement in these recent adventures. But this episode does prove that, given the right material to work with, a Summer-centric episode can be a lot of fun, as long as she's balanced out with Rick. Rick and Summer have an interesting push and pull, like in Raising Gazorpazorp, where when they go to this new planet that's dominated by women, Rick is challenged by Summer's feminist ideals, and they both actually find a pretty satisfying middle ground to that entire argument. I don't know which plot people prefer in that episode, but I kind of prefer the Rick and Summer adventure, because it's just more thought-provoking and interesting. So I'm proposing we get more Rick and Summer adventures in the future, because their dynamic was one of the highlights of the episode, and it's really where it caught my attention. Forget Rick and Morty, I want more Rick and Summer. So, I don't know about you, but Morty has become a little stale. Not bad by any means, just kinda, I don't know, boring. We know what he's been through. We've seen him turn on Rick so fast he'll just kill him. So for him to regress to the basic sidekick who doesn't question anything doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Morty as a whole has been kind of absent this entire season. It's baffling. Even if he wasn't, taking up most of the screen time, that's fine. The focus has been on Rick and Rick Prime, but, I don't know, what's his character arc right now? Kind of nothing, and it hasn't been for a few seasons. So I think Morty has some room for improvement right now, but that gives Summer a chance to do some more adventures with Rick, and they could be really fun, because we've always kind of known that Summer has a Rick-like personality and approach to the outside world. She can be a shoot-first problem solver, much like our Rick likes to take control of the situation, and I'm surprised their interests don't align more often. Rick and Summer working together is just fun because it's like Rick and Jerry. They're so different, but also have a weird shared history or shared perspective. Like Rick and Jerry are on opposite ends of the spectrum. They're on the extremes in terms of personality. That's why the Rick and Jerry episodes are always my favorite. And Rick and Summer, even though they are more similar than that, can really bring a new vibe to the show that I think it's missing. I don't even miss the high school adventures. Honestly, leave those in the past. We're fine without them. But Summer always seems to bring more high school drama with her. And the mixing of high school and sci-fi has produced some of the quintessential episodes of Rick and Morty. So maybe it would be a welcome dynamic. But I know this has been kind of scattershot. You're probably not convinced. So here's a pitch for an episode. Summer has a party, but no one shows up because there's a cooler party down the street. So she steals Rick's portal gun to find some interdimensional booze to kick it up a notch. Morty tells on her and is expecting Rick to berate her. but he's appalled when Rick pulls a 180 and takes Summer on their own adventure to find this crazy booze that, unknown to Rick, increases the drinker's intelligence. Jerry sneaks into the party because he's jealous or bored and gets so drunk that he becomes smarter than Rick, which sends them spiraling into a race to outsmart the other by drinking this booze. It's sort of like that episode of More Smarter from Regular Show. Give it the Dan Harmon story circle treatment and boom, episode writes itself. Maybe Beth walks in, thinks it's some more generic red wine, becomes super smart. Maybe Morty tries to do it, but he's just so dumb that it doesn't work. Like, I just came up with that right off the bat. You can have the whole family in a race to be the smartest. That's kind of a fun episode, I think. You know, it's season 7 of Rick and Morty, and they're looking for some fresh storylines. I think it's no secret, the ratings aren't in a great place right now. The online buzz just isn't what it used to be. And even though my channel is pulling pretty good numbers relative to what I normally put out, everyone else is feeling the burn. I don't think even Film Theory has put out a Rick and Morty episode this season. And you know they're in some deep shit when not even Film Theory is talking about Rick and Morty. So, kind of a sour end to this video, but I said what I wanted to say and I'll stand by it. In the end, guys, what was the name of this episode? Wet Quat Amortican Summer? Yeah, whatever. Let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments. Also, I want to hear your pitches for Rick and Summer adventures. I can't be the only one who thinks more of them is a good idea. So that's it for this video on Rick and Morty. More videos to come soon, I hope. Next week's episode looks kind of hit or miss, just like this one. This season started out so strong. Not the first episode, no. But then they had a string of really good ones, and now maybe we're in a lull again? I don't know. Maybe you'll love this episode. Anyway, my name is Cndls. I will see you in the next one.